Hey, what's up, world? This is John McLaughlin, the governor with the Abakuas. I just wanted to come do a quick little video. It's been a minute since I did one of these, um, but just had something I wanted to talk about real quickly. And today we're going to talk about the infamous black spending power or black buying power. All right. I think it's relevant, particularly now with all the protesting and all that, and boycotting and things happening right now. Um, to dive in a little bit and see what this is really all about. People love to talk about our spending power. We have $1.4 trillion buying power. But what does that really mean, and what does it really signify? Um, First of all, the first thing I would mention is that our total GDP for America is $21 trillion or something like that. That black spending power, the 1.4 trillion, is a piece of that total GDP. And as you can see, if you're any good at math, that's roughly like 5% of the GDP. Um, so a couple things there. Number one, if we were just to disappear or move or take all our dollars elsewhere, that's not, I'm not saying it's insignificant totally. I'm just saying it's not like it would not be possible to replace that. I mean, say we all pack up, take our dollars with us, move somewhere else. They open up the borders a little bit, let some Central Americans and some South Americans and some Africans or whatever come back in the country, and that money is replaced basically. More significantly than that, I would say for us to have 5% of the GDP, we make up about 13% of the population. So if you're looking at that number of 1.4 trillion and thinking it's something super impressive, I would say that it's not. I mean, 13% of the population, 5% of the GDP. To me, that seems like a pretty significant imbalance that's not in our favor. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind. Um, Next, I would look at, you know, where does that money go? Okay, where does that $1.4 trillion go? And the reality is that the majority of that money is not discretionary money. It's not money that we are just like, oh, where do I want to spend this money? Obviously, there is some discretionary money. I'm not saying there's zero discretionary money, but the majority of that is not discretionary money. The majority of that is going to rents, mortgages, insurances, uh, you know, probably transportation, um, utilities, things like that that you don't really necessarily have an option of paying. You got to have a house to live in. You got to have lights and water, and you got to have health insurance, or you got to have car insurance, or whatever the case may be. So a significant portion of that money is not really money that's like discretionary, where we can just choose to spend it wherever we want to. Um, there is a slice, there is a significant chunk of that is probably discretionary, but I would say the majority of it is probably not discretionary income, where we can just choose when and where to spend it. Um, but that brings me to really the more important point about this, which is when you're talking about black spending power, black buying power, and the GDP, that is money that's already spent. That's money that's gone. Okay, that's not our money anymore. The GDP is basically the sum of all economic activity for a given year. So when we say, oh, we had 1.4 trillion buying power last year, that means that we spent $1.4 trillion last year. That does not mean that we have $1.4 trillion. Okay? And that is where we get it twisted a lot. We confuse spending with wealth. Okay? The logic is that, oh, the more wealth you have, the more money you can spend, which is true. But we take that and we kind of flip it with this spending power, because we say, oh, well, we're spending $1.4 trillion, so we must have some money, and that is not true. Okay? That is not true. Wealth is not what you spend, it's what you have, it's what you own, it's what is an asset to you, what you possess and control. We do not control those $1.4 trillion. That is money we have spent and is now somebody else's $1.4 trillion. Dollars. The vast, vast majority of it is going to people that are not part of our community. Okay. So that really isn't our money. We talk about 1.4 trillion spending power. Those aren't our dollars. We don't actually own those dollars. So it's important to see that distinction. Spending money doesn't mean you have wealth. Having money and having assets and having control of resources and owning properties and businesses and things of that nature, that is wealth. Okay, spending money is not wealth. Okay, now if you want to look on the flip side, the average African American household net worth is $35,000. I'm sorry, the median, not the average. The median African American net worth is $35,000. That means that 50% of African Americans have less than that number. 50% of African Americans have less than $35,000 of wealth that they own and control. Okay, think about that when you come talking about all the spending power that we have. And there's projections on that net worth number that, it'll go to zero by like 2050 or something like that. 2050 or 2055 or something like that. The average black home net worth is expected to go to $0. Zero. Okay. So I just wanted to really hit on that real quick. I'm not gonna, drivel on about it. I said what I had to say really, and the key thing I wanted to highlight is that stop confusing what you spend with your wealth. Spending is not wealth. Okay, just because you spent some money does not mean that you have wealth. We have 1.4 trillion spending power. That's how much money we spend a year. Okay, to put that in perspective, Jeff Bezos, I'm not even sure the exact number right this moment, but his net worth by himself as one individual is like $250 billion, 250 billion or something in that range. I don't know the exact number, but it's in that range. So that one man by himself has as much has a quarter of net worth, compared to what we like to highlight of our spending power. And I want you to know that those are not equitable. Okay. His 250 billion of net worth is much more powerful than our 1.4 trillion of spending money that we give to other people and that we don't even actually own. That's not even our money. So the main point is generational wealth matters. Okay. Wealth matters. If you want to build a nation, you have to have capital. If you want to build a community, you need capital. If you want to build a family, you need capital. Okay, and each one of those levels leads to the next one: family, community, nation. You can't do any of those without wealth. So stop thinking about, oh, I made $300,000 this year, if that's even what you do, but you spent 75% of it going to somebody else. Okay, so you don't have $300,000 worth of wealth. You have whatever that number would be, $75,000 of wealth. Okay. So, and if your salary is lower to that, say you make $50,000 and you spend $45,000 of it just surviving, you have $5,000 worth that you actually own and control. So it's really important to connect that in our thought process. Okay. Spending power does not equal wealth. Wealth is what you keep. Wealth is what you keep. It's not what you give to other people. So we need to start focusing on what we keep, start focusing on our wealth, start focusing on building our own table instead of saying, oh, well, if you don't let me at your table, I'm not going to go to Target for a couple days, But then as soon as Target starts pumping out, look at all these black brands we got, then we're going to go champion Target. And Target's so progressive. Let's all big up Target. Okay? Wealth is what you keep. Focus on what you are keeping for yourself and your family. Accumulate, as Mr. T would say. Accumulate your assets. your resources. Okay, so that's all I had to say for today. It's good to see y'all again, and talk to y'all soon. Bless up.